This is video 9.9, and we're going to be talking about a church exit interview. We've spent a good amount of time in this course discussing discipleship within your church, as well as how and where to form new connections and relationships outside the church. But there's one more space that is ripe for discipleship that I want to highlight before we move on to the last module. This is potentially one of the most overlooked discipleship opportunities within churches, and it's one that has the potential for so many benefits. This is the discipleship opportunity you have with someone leaving your church. Since churches have been in decline in America, there's of course been a lot of research and effort put into stemming that tide. And there's two areas to focus in order to do this. There's focusing on how to bring more people into the church. There are both large-scale efforts by research groups and church anthropologists and theologians, as well as small-scale efforts by individual churches who are considering their own particular context. But then there's also the other door to consider. Not just how do we bring people into the church, but how do we keep people from leaving? And while there are many of the large-scale studies and efforts to understand why people leave the church, we tend to overlook this a bit at the individual church level because it's painful. It's easier to look at the broader picture of Christianity. What are the studies telling me about why people are leaving church? Okay, now how do I take that information and consider that for my own church? But we don't always ask, why are people leaving my church? Having some sort of church exit interview built into the discipleship structure at your church can have huge implications for you. First, it provides a regular opportunity to hear from your people what things are important to them and what are the questions that they are asking. Notice that your fieldwork assignments for this module, it wasn't, all right, plan out a Bible study for the book of Joshua, and I want you to find 3 people to lead through that study. It was spend time learning with your people about their questions, about their interests, so that you can better understand what they need. Jesus didn't have the same discipleship conversation on repeat over and over with everyone he met. Instead, he started where they were with their questions and then moved from there onto the discipleship conversation, which of course is the gospel. Discipleship starts by meeting the other person where they are, and making exit interviews a habit provides you with a regular opportunity to hear more from your people. Another thing exit interviews help with is keeping you attentive to your people so they don't just begin to slip away. This is a story we hear all the time, and I'm sure you have too, both in nationwide studies on why people leave, and also just people that we know. Someone starts coming less and less consistently for whatever reason, whether it's something on their end, something they're going through, just a hard time, or maybe it is something with the church and something they're struggling with. And then they stop coming and no one reaches out to them. I've heard so many times, I didn't really know that I was going to be leaving, but when so-and-so happened and I stopped coming, no one reached out to see why I wasn't there. So why would I want to go back? So if you're in the habit of noticing when people leave in order to have some kind of exit interview, this can help safeguard against those people just slipping away. Exit interviews can also give people the opportunity to feel heard, and this has the potential to really improve relationship between your church and the person leaving. They may have some negative reasons for leaving, but being given the space to share their feedback and then having you receive that feedback graciously can help maybe heal over some of those wounds they felt that they were leaving with. If someone is leaving for negative reasons, these meetings can be really tough. The important thing to remember is that the purpose of this meeting is not to try to convince them to stay. It's simply to listen to them. And it could go well and help them leave on better terms while giving you some things to consider for your church. But be aware that these could also go poorly. Unfortunately, the reality is that most people leave a church without ever sharing the things that were frustrating to them. And then the first time that you hear about it is when they've already decided to leave. And at that point, once the decision's made, there's nothing you can do to change their mind. And also on their end, they don't have as much incentive to remain cordial, so a lot can just kind of come out. If this is the case, just remember it is still important to listen. And you can respond by saying something like, I hear all that you're saying, and I understand why that really does frustrate you. Your thoughts and feelings are important to me, so I wish that I had known about them earlier. I'm not sure that this accusation or this one is fair, and I would have liked to have the opportunity to maybe explore that more with you, but I understand that your mind's made up. Is there some way I can help you as you're leaving, maybe in order to help you land in a new church home? These conversations are hard, but the fact that this is the way some of these exit interviews will go is not a reason not to do them, because people don't always leave for negative reasons. Another thing exit interviews can do are give you opportunities to celebrate people and send them off with a blessing as a church. This is something I've seen, and you've probably seen as well, churches do for maybe leaders or staff members who are moving on to something else, but it's not a common practice to do for regular churchgoers. Missio, which is the name of our church, means sending out. And when we first came up with the name, we had no idea how significant our name would be to our mission. Seattle's a transient city. Most people stay here for about 2 years, and a lot of the churches here talk about that 2-year turnover. It's almost like starting over every couple of years with a whole new church. And as a new church plant, of course, most of our planning and attention and a strategy was on bringing in new people to Missio. But as soon as we hit that 2-year mark and we started to see that turnover, we decided we also needed to invest in how people leave. And that's actually become one of our markers of success as a church to help us know how we're doing. Are people leaving Missio further along in their spiritual journey than when they arrived? We had Christine who left saying, Missio restored my faith in church. The Jordans and the Phillips and Jim hadn't been a part of a church before they came to Missio, but when they moved to new cities and left Seattle, finding a church community was a top priority for them. Marv and Jake were baptized during their time with Missio. We try to be a church that celebrates the journeys of our people for the months or years or however long that it is that they are with us. And then we send them out with a blessing. And most people have left Missio on good terms, but not all. Some have been very painful, and some have helped us realize some things that we could do differently. But in all the cases, we try to hear from our people before they leave. So I strongly encourage you to consider exit interviews as a regular habit in your discipleship strategy for your church. But let me just leave you with one final note. Again, guys, don't make this awkward. This is not a formal interview that people have to go to in order to have permission to leave the church. It's just a planned relational connection moment, giving them a chance to share. You can just say, hey, I would love to connect with you one more time before you leave and get the chance to hear some of your thoughts about your time with us. And your questions don't have to be, all right, list all these, it can be very casual questions. How have you grown during your time here? What was missing that you think might have been beneficial for your spiritual journey? Or what are you looking for in your next faith community? These are great questions that can help give you feedback to help understand where your people are at, and it can give them a chance to feel heard.